been kind of coming back to you about e-cigarettes. Although the use of cigarettes has decreased over time in this population, in the adolescent population, we still find that e-cigarette use is increasing. So the first way people look at this is the gateway drug effect, and so nicotine is sometimes thought of as a gateway drug. And a study in 2009 looked at data from over 20,000 students, and this data is almost disturbing. It's found that 10 to 30 times people who, I'm sorry, these are students, these are junior high and high school students. When they started nicotine use at that age, they were 10 to 30 times more likely to use illicit drugs. This gateway effect gave rise to the idea of this neurochemical gateway effect, where reward systems are permanently altered when adolescents are exposed to nicotine. And this has been found with cocaine, alcohol, and it also affects the cannabinoid system function. So that brings us to the goal of the present study. We wanted to investigate whether chronic nicotine exposure starting in adolescence would act as a modifier of the rewarding properties of a cannabinoid agonist in adulthood. Since we've seen that nicotine acts as a gateway drug of sorts for other drugs, we did want to see if it works for marijuana as well. What we used for this study was male Sprout Jolly rats. They're used from post-natal day 31, which is adolescent age, through 73. There were 4 to 5 rats per group in this age, and they were living on a 12-hour light-dark cycle, so their light was turned off and on automatically, and they were given free access to food and water the entire time. We used the conditioned place preference paradigm. This is a paradigm that measures drug reward. This is a classic Pavlovian conditioning type of experiment. So for this experiment, there were 2 compartments, as you can see. There's a black side and a white side, and then there's a choice compartment with a gray color. That's the gray color at the bottom, and there's solid wood flooring, whereas the other 2 have bars or mesh wiring with wood bedding type of stuff. So what we started with was a nicotine treatment, and rats were assigned to be given a dose of 0.16, 0.32, or 0.64 milligrams per kilogram, and this was subcutaneously injected. On PD 55 through 59, we did have a habituation type of where we get the rats basically used to walking down back and forth between hallways. At this point, they've never been out of the vivarium, and we need to take them to a separate room, but we don't want anxiety to be the cause of the results that we're seeing. So we do a habituation process to make sure that they are ready to go and that they're used to going back and forth. So when we get to the conditioning procedure, we start at the 14-day bias procedure, and we start with preconditioning, and that happens on PD 60. So when they're doing this preconditioning, they have access to both sides of the compartment for 15 minutes. They won't be given a drug right away, but they'll be able to choose which side of the compartment that they want to go into. They can go to the black side or the white side from the gray side, but they don't have access back into the gray side. 30 minutes after that, they're given a cannabinoid agonist injection. These are intraperitoneal injections. It's 0, 10, 20, or 30 micrograms per kilogram. For conditioning, what we did was on PD 62 through 71, we took the drugs or the side of the box that they prepared. The rats chose this side of the box themselves, basically. And so what we did was, if they preferred the black side, like at the top picture, if they preferred the black side, we paired the drug with the white side to see if that preference for the black side would change to white when it's paired with the drug, to see if the drug has that much of an effect on their preference. And vice versa, if they preferred the white side, then we paired the drug with the black side. So on conditioning, we did kind of it goes kind of back and forth. We did saline one day, drug the next day, saline drug, through these 10 days of conditioning. And we got measures to see how long or how much distance they moved within each side of the compartment. On PD 73, so they had PD 72 off, we did a procedure similar to the preconditioning procedure, except that they were not administered any drug on this day. And so the purpose of this was to see what their change in preference for which side was from from preconditioning to the testing day. So here's a little timeline just to show The chronic nicotine injections run for 42 days, so they're going even when the conditioning and preconditioning and conditioning handling, when all that's going on, they're still getting nicotine the whole way through. We did this so that we wouldn't have to worry about the rats reacting to withdrawal from nicotine. Our statistical design was a 4x4 between subjects design. This is with the 4 doses of nicotine and the 4 doses of the cannabinoid agonist. We took a preference score, which is the time in the non-preferred compartment on preconditioning day, subtracted from the time spent in the drug-paired compartment on test day. So what we got for our results was that as the dose increased, the difference in locomotor activity decreases. So this is just specifically with the cannabinoid agonist. So the dose here, at the highest dose of the cannabinoid agonist, they had the least decrease in locomotor activity. And then here we have our data from test day. So from here, these are our preference scores. We have 2 significant results. The preference scores are positive, meaning they did change their sides here. But so what we have here is with the saline drug, the highest dose of the CP agonist caused the greatest change in preference. And then on this one here, we found that a low dose of the CP drug actually caused a preference for moderate, or when combined, with a moderate dose of the nic drug. So there are a lot of clinical implications for something like this, and I want to just take a minute to talk about this. But moderate doses of nicotine beginning in adolescence can act in modifying the rewarding value of low doses of marijuana, is what we found. But there's a question of animals' experiences versus humans' experiences, because to find a condition place preference with cannabinoids is very unusual. They don't typically like the drug. Laboratory animals have not been found to self-administer or to generally, they don't change preference for cannabinoids, but we've somehow found that when combined with a low dose of nicotine, they do find it very more rewarding, so they're able to change preference. So that raises questions of what would happen with people who already like marijuana if the nicotine allows for rats to somehow like marijuana when they generally do not. It definitely brings up questions of whether or not how that would affect humans who are already liking marijuana. They don't find it aversive, but for some reason rats do. So yeah, it's interesting there to get that preference, and it kind of speaks to the power of the combination of drugs. Great. Any questions?
Good. Questions? Dr. Alsopper? Well, I was just wondering if you could briefly talk about the rationale for the length of treatment for 18 and adolescents.
Well, what we started out with was a 10-day kind of acute nicotine treatment, and we were finding that they were finding it highly aversive, and even more so than just like the cannabinoids before. So we decided to lengthen the amount of time for to make it a chronic nicotine administration. So because we were worried that they were experiencing withdrawals from the nicotine in that from the period of time in adolescence when they had the nicotine, and between that and the period of time where they were started doing the conditioning. So we lengthened the nicotine for the life of the experiment, so that we know it wasn't nicotine withdrawals that were causing any change in preference, basically, or not a change in preference. Is that okay?
Take into consideration the length of time it takes for the nicotine to wear out, as opposed to the cannabinoid.
Yeah, and that's why there are 2 different injection techniques. The nicotine is a subcutaneous injection, so that's administered actually right after their conditioning. So they get the cannabinoid first thing, and that they have 10 minutes to kind of let that kick in. It's an intraperitoneal injection, so it goes out into the body quicker, into the brain. With the sub-Q, we do that afterwards, or after the conditioning, and then that it takes a longer time to absorb with that route of administration. So they're given more time with the drug, basically, by changing the route of administration.
Questions?
Thank you so much, Andrea. Great talk.